I'd been staring at the water stain on the ceiling of room 12 at the Riverside Motel for so long that I'd started seeing shapes in it. A dragon. A broken heart. My own face twisted in pain. 3 weeks in this place and I'd memorized every crack, every smell of mildew and old cigarette smoke that the previous tenants had left behind. This was rock bottom and I'd been lying here wondering if there was any point in getting up at all. The knock on the door made me jump. I hadn't had a visitor since I'd checked in with my one pathetic suitcase and the last of my dignity stuffed in my pockets. Miss Sienna Michaels? The voice belonged to Randy, the motel manager. He was 60-something, with kind eyes that had seen too many people like me pass through his doors. I dragged myself off the bed, catching my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. My dark brown skin looked ashy and dull. My natural hair, which I'd always kept perfectly maintained, was pulled back in a messy bun. I'd lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks, and my clothes hung off my frame like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. I opened the door a crack. Yes. Randy held up a dusty leather suitcase, the kind that looked expensive even under a layer of grime. This was in our lost and found. Been there about 4 months. Has your name on the tag. My heart stopped. What? He turned the tag toward me. There it was in neat handwriting, Sienna Michaels. My old address was crossed out, and someone had written, "Hold for arrival at Riverside Motel" underneath. 4 months. I repeated, my voice cracking. For months ago, I'd still been living in the mansion. Still married to Julian. Still best friends with Cassandra. Still completely blind to the fact that my entire life was a lie. Yeah, someone dropped it off, paid us to keep it safe. Said you'd be coming eventually. Randy shifted his weight. I only just got around to sorting through the storage room. Sorry about that. My hands shook as I took the suitcase. It was heavy. Who dropped it off? Didn't catch a name. Older lady, black, maybe 70? She seemed real sure you'd need it when you got here. I closed the door and set the suitcase on the bed. For a long moment I just stared at it. For months ago, someone had known I would end up here. Someone had known my perfect life would shatter into pieces so small I'd never be able to put them back together. The lock clicked open easily. I lifted the lid and gasped. Money. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills, bound with paper bands. My hands moved frantically, counting. $10,000. $20,000. $50,000. $70,000 in cash. Underneath the money was a plain ticket. My name on it. Departure. Tomorrow morning at 6. Destination. Charleston, South Carolina. And beneath that, a single piece of cream-colored stationery with words written in the same handwriting from the tag. Sienna, this is just travel money. The real fortune is waiting for you at 1482 Belmont Street, Charleston. Go there. Everything you need is there. Everything you lost was preparing you for what you're about to gain. Trust me one more time. Your flight leaves tomorrow. Don't miss it. There was no signature. I sank onto the bed, the note trembling in my hands. Someone had planned this. Someone had known for months before it happened, that I would lose everything. That I would end up in this terrible motel room, broken and alone. That I would need exactly this, a way out, a second chance, a mysterious fortune waiting in a city I'd never been to. But who? And how? I looked at the money again, fanning through the bills to make sure they were real. They were. $70,000. More money than I'd held in my hands since Julian's lawyers had taken everything from me, citing the prenup I'd signed when I was 23 and too in love to read the fine print. The prenup that left me with nothing after 7 years of marriage. Nothing except the clothes I'd packed in one suitcase and $3,000 from my personal account that Julian had somehow missed. My phone buzzed. Another message from an unknown number. They'd been coming for weeks now, but I'd stopped reading them after the first few. They were all the same: Julian's friends, his business associates, people I'd thought were my friends, all telling me I should be grateful he'd kept me around as long as he did. That a girl from my background should have known better than to think she belonged in his world. But this message was different. I know you found the suitcase. Get on that plane, Sienna. Your grandmother wanted you to have what she built. Don't let them win by staying in that motel room. My grandmother. The word hit me like cold water. My grandmother had died 6 months ago, and I'd missed her funeral because Julian had convinced me I needed to be at his company retreat instead. Business first, baby. She'd understand. You barely talked to her anyway. I'd regretted it every day since. Grandma Ruth had raised me after my parents died when I was 8. She'd worked 3 jobs to put me through college. She'd been the one who taught me to stand tall, to never let anyone make me feel small. And then I'd married Julian and slowly let her slip away, convinced by his subtle comments that I needed to focus on our life together instead of the past. I picked up the note again, studying the handwriting. Now that I was really looking, I recognized it. Grandma Ruth's elegant script, the way she looped her letters, the way she pressed harder on the downstrokes. She'd done this. Somehow before she died, she'd known. She'd known that Julian would betray me, that Cassandra would stab me in the back, that I would lose everything and end up here. And she'd left me a way out. Tears streamed down my face, the first real tears I'd cried since the day I'd walked in on Julian and Cassandra in our bedroom. I'd been too shocked to cry then, too angry during the divorce, too numb when I'd lost my job and my home and ended up here. But now, holding this note from the grandmother I'd neglected, the grandmother who'd loved me enough to plan for my rescue even from beyond the grave, I finally broke. I cried for the marriage that had been a lie, for the friend who'd never been a friend at all, for the 7 years I'd wasted trying to be someone Julian could love, not realizing he was incapable of loving anyone but himself. But most of all, I cried because Grandma Ruth had known. She'd seen through Julian when I couldn't. She'd watched me drift away and hadn't given up on me. She'd died knowing I would need her one more time, and she'd made sure I'd have what I needed when that time came. I wiped my eyes and looked at the plane ticket. Tomorrow morning, Charleston. A mysterious address and a promise of a fortune. I had nothing to lose. Everything I'd cared about was already gone. My marriage, my home, my career, my friends, all of it had been built on sand, and Julian and Cassandra had washed it away without a second thought. But maybe Grandma Ruth was right. Maybe losing everything wasn't the end. Maybe it was preparation for something better. Something real. Something that was actually mine. I carefully repacked the money, tucked the ticket and note into my purse, and set an alarm for 3 in the morning. I'd need to catch a cab to the airport. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt curious, nervous, maybe even a tiny bit hopeful. Tomorrow I'd fly to Charleston. I'd find 1482 Belmont Street. I'd discover what Grandma Ruth had left for me. And maybe, just maybe, I'd start to find myself again. I looked at my reflection one more time. The woman in the mirror still looked broken. But beneath the pain I could see something else now. A spark. A possibility. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm coming." 3 months ago, I woke up in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The morning sun filtered through custom silk curtains in our master bedroom, casting everything in a soft golden glow. Julian's side of the bed was already empty, no surprise there. My billionaire husband was always up before dawn, heading to his home gym or taking conference calls with business partners overseas. I stretched and reached for my phone. 7:15. I had a board meeting at 9 for the Prescott Foundation, the charitable organization I'd helped Julian build from the ground up. Then lunch with Cassandra at noon. Then a fitting for the gown I'd wear to the Tech Innovation Gala next month. My life was a carefully organized schedule of beautiful obligations, and I'd convinced myself I was happy. "Good morning, Mrs. Prescott." Helen, our housekeeper, knocked softly before entering with my usual breakfast tray. Green smoothie, avocado toast on gluten-free bread, fresh berries. The same breakfast I'd had every morning for 5 years because a nutritionist Julian hired told me it was optimal. "Morning, Helen. Has Mr. Prescott already left?" "Yes, ma'am. He said he'd be at the office all day. Late meeting tonight, he won't be home for dinner." I nodded, hiding my disappointment. Julian had been having a lot of late meetings lately. 3 or 4 nights a week for the past 2 months. I'd suggested we take a vacation, reconnect, maybe go back to Bali where we'd honeymooned. He'd laughed and kissed my forehead like I was a child who'd said something cute. "After the Series D funding round, baby. I promise. This company needs me right now." The company always needed him. More than I did, apparently. I got ready in my walk-in closet, which was bigger than the apartment Grandma Ruth and I had shared when I was growing up. Designer clothes hung in color-coordinated rows. Shoes I'd worn once or never lined glass shelves. Jewelry that cost more than a house sparkled in a locked cabinet. I chose a cream blazer and matching pants, paired with Louboutin heels. Pearl earrings. Simple. Professional. The kind of outfit Julian approved of for board meetings. I'd forgotten when I'd started choosing clothes based on Julian's approval instead of my own taste. The board meeting went smoothly. I presented the quarterly report on our scholarship program for underprivileged kids studying STEM. It was the part of my life I was most proud of, using Julian's wealth to give kids like I'd been a real shot at success. 12 students were heading to Ivy League schools this fall because of our foundation. "Excellent work, Sienna," Harold Patterson said. He was Julian's CFO and had been skeptical when Julian first made me foundation director. These results are impressive. I smiled, feeling a genuine moment of pride. At least I was doing something meaningful, even if my marriage felt like it was dying slowly. After the meeting, I drove to Le Jardin, the French restaurant where Cassandra and I met every Tuesday for lunch. We'd been best friends since college, where we'd bonded over being scholarship students in a sea of trust fund babies. She'd been there when I met Julian at a tech conference where I was working as an event coordinator. She'd been my maid of honor at our wedding. She was already seated when I arrived, looking stunning in a red dress that showed off her curves. Cassandra always dressed bold while I dressed safe. It was one of the things I loved about her. She helped me remember to have fun. "There's my favorite billionaire's wife," she said, standing to hug me. She smelled like expensive perfume, something new. "You look gorgeous. Love the outfit." "Thanks. You look amazing too. New dress." "Yeah, I've been treating myself lately. Got a promotion at work, remember?" I did remember. She'd moved from marketing coordinator to senior marketing manager at a tech startup. I'd been so proud of her. We'd come so far from our college days of splitting ramen packets and studying in the library until closing. We ordered our usual salads, sparkling water. Cassandra had taught me to order salads at restaurants like this. "It's what women like us need to do in spaces like this," she'd said once. "We have to look like we belong." "So, how's Julian?" she asked, her eyes bright with interest. "Busy. Always busy. I barely see him anymore. Must be hard being married to someone so driven." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But that's what you signed up for, right? The billionaire lifestyle." Something about her tone bothered me, but I pushed it away. "I guess. I just wish we had more time together." "Have you thought about getting more involved in his company? Maybe that's the way to connect with him. Through his work." It wasn't the first time she'd suggested it. Over the past few months, Cassandra had become increasingly interested in Julian's business. She asked questions about his meetings, his deals, his partners. I thought she was just being supportive, trying to help me understand my husband's world better. "I don't know. He keeps that pretty separate. Says I have my foundation work and he has his company." Cassandra sipped her water. "Well, if you ever want to surprise him, I could help. I know a lot about tech marketing now. Maybe we could brainstorm some ideas for his next product launch." "That's sweet, but Julian has a whole team for that." "Of course. I just want to help however I can. You're my best friend, Sienna. Your happiness matters to me." I smiled, grateful. At least I had Cassandra. Even if Julian was distant, even if our marriage felt more like a business arrangement than a love story, I had my best friend. If only I'd known that my best friend was the reason my marriage was dying. That evening, I came home to an empty house. Julian had texted that his meeting would run until midnight. I ate dinner alone in our massive dining room, then tried to watch TV in our home theater. Everything felt too big, too quiet, too empty. Around 9, I decided to go to bed early. As I walked past Julian's home office, I noticed the door was slightly open. He usually kept it locked when he wasn't there. I shouldn't have gone in. I should have respected his privacy. But something pulled me forward, some instinct I'd been ignoring for months. His laptop was on his desk, still open. The screensaver was off, showing his email inbox. I saw Cassandra's name. Multiple emails from Cassandra going back months. My heart started pounding. I clicked on the most recent one. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll wear that black dress you like. The things you do to me in your office should be illegal. I love you." See, the world tilted. I grabbed the desk to steady myself. I clicked on another email. Then another. Months of messages. Plans to meet. Photos I couldn't bring myself to look at closely. Discussions about how to handle the Sienna situation after he secured his next round of funding. "She's useful for the foundation and the public image, but she's so boring. You make me feel alive." I found messages about them being together while I was at foundation events. While I was visiting my grandmother in the hospital. While I was planning his birthday party. They'd been sleeping together in our home. In his office. In the vacation house I'd decorated thinking it was our special place. And Cassandra had been helping him plan to leave me timing it for after his company's valuation went up. After the tech gala where good publicity would help soften the blow. I was the last to know that my marriage was over. The last to know that my best friend had been betraying me for over a year. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra. "Hey babe. Forgot to mention at lunch I'm not available Tuesday next week. Have a work thing. Rain check." The work thing was my husband. I stood in that office for a long time, Reading email after email, torture that I couldn't look away from. By the time I heard Julian's car pull into the driveway at midnight, I'd memorized every detail of their affair. He walked into the house whistling. Actually whistling. I met him in the foyer. "Sienna, you're still up?" He moved to kiss me and I stepped back. "Long meeting?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Yeah, you know how it is. Investors are demanding." He loosened his tie, started walking toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted." "I bet. Must be hard work, sleeping with my best friend." He froze. Turned slowly. His face went through several expressions: surprise, calculation, then cold acceptance. "You went through my computer. You left it open. And you're sleeping with Cassandra." He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Just sighed like I'd caught him forgetting to take out the trash. "How long have you known?" "About an hour." "How long has it been going on?" 14 months. 14 months. Over a year. While I'd been planning romantic dinners. While I'd been trying to get pregnant like we'd discussed. While I'd been telling Cassandra about my marriage problems, she'd been creating them. Why? It was the only question that mattered. Julian shrugged. "You want the truth? You're not exciting anymore, Sienna. You're beautiful, you're good at your charity work, you make me look good. But Cassandra is passionate. She's ambitious. She challenges me. I challenged you. Before you convinced me to be quieter. Smaller. More appropriate for a billionaire's wife. You wanted this life. The clothes, the house, the status. Don't act like you're the victim here. I wanted a husband who loved me. I do care about you. But love? Come on. We were practical. You got the life you dreamed of, and I got a beautiful wife who knew how to play the part. It worked for a while." The casual cruelty of his words stole my breath. 7 years. 7 years of molding myself into what he wanted, and he was standing here telling me it had all been an act. "I want a divorce. Already planned." He pulled out his phone, texted someone. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get what's specified." "Not much, I'm afraid. I helped build your foundation. I've given 7 years to your company's image. And you'll have great references. The prenup is ironclad, Sienna. My lawyer made sure of that. You get $50,000. That's it. $50,000. For 7 years of my life. What about the foundation?" "My company. My foundation. My money. You were just the face, sweetheart." "And Cassandra?" He smiled. "She'll be moving in after the divorce is final. She actually wants to be involved in the business. She has ideas. Vision. Things you never had." I slapped him. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. The crack echoed through our foyer. Julian touched his cheek, his eyes going dark. "That's assault. Lucky for you, I won't press charges. But you need to be out of this house by the end of the week. I'll have my lawyer send over the details." He walked upstairs like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just destroyed my entire world with the same casual indifference he showed when ordering coffee. I stood in the foyer of the mansion I'd thought was my home and realized I had nowhere to go. My family was just Grandma Ruth, and I hadn't called her in 6 months. My friends were all Julian's friends. My job was at his foundation. My life was completely built around a man who just told me I was nothing more than a pretty accessory he was done with. The worst part? Cassandra had helped him plan it all. My best friend had spent a year lying to my face, sleeping with my husband, and helping him figure out the best way to throw me away. I packed a suitcase that night. Clothes, toiletries, a few photos of Grandma Ruth. I took my wedding rings off and left them on the kitchen counter. By morning I was gone. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I'd ever feel powerless. The last time I'd let someone else define my worth. Because 3 weeks later, I'd find a suitcase with $70,000 and a plane ticket to Charleston. And everything was about to change. Julian's lawyers moved fast. By the time I'd checked into a cheap hotel downtown, the divorce papers had already been filed. The prenup I'd signed at 23, fresh from college and so in love I could barely see straight, turned out to be exactly as bad as Julian had promised. I got $50,000. Split over 2 payments. The first payment would come after the divorce was final, which would take 6 months. The second payment would come 6 months after that. In the meantime, I had the $3,000 in my personal checking account and nowhere to live. The prenup is very clear. Julian's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chin—wait, I can't use that name. Patricia Winters explained over the phone. She sounded bored, like she processed discarded wives every day. You waive rights to any property acquired during the marriage, any business interests, any shared assets. The marital home is in Mr. Prescott's name alone. The cars are leased through his company. Your credit cards were company cards, now canceled. You have no claim to the foundation as you were an employee, not a founder, despite what you may have believed. I built that foundation with him. You worked for the foundation. There's a difference. Your employment was terminated this morning. You'll receive 2-week severance, which is generous considering you serve at will. He's firing me? The board voted this morning. Given the circumstances of your divorce, they felt it was inappropriate for you to continue as director. Mr. Prescott abstained from the vote, of course. Of course. Julian had probably orchestrated the whole thing. What about my personal belongings? My grandmother's jewelry? My photos? You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to collect anything from the house that you can prove is yours. Bring receipts or proof of ownership. Otherwise, it belongs to the marital estate, which is Mr. Prescott's property. I wanted to scream. Instead I said, I understand, and hung up. I spent that first week in a daze. I went to the house on Friday with 2 friends from college. I'd reconnected with women I'd neglected during my marriage because Julian said they were from my old life. They hugged me tight and helped me pack boxes while Julian was conveniently away on a business trip. Most of my clothes stayed. They were gifts from Julian, which meant they were technically his. My grandmother's jewelry was mine at least. A few photo albums. Some books. My college degree. Everything that mattered fit in 3 boxes. He's such a piece of trash, my friend Nicole said, carrying a box to her car. I never liked him. Too controlling. Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? You were so in love. And he made sure you weren't around much. She was right. Julian had slowly isolated me from everyone who'd known me before. Just one more way he'd controlled my life without me realizing it. The second week, reality set in. I couldn't afford the hotel for more than another week. I applied to jobs, every nonprofit director position, every program manager role, every opportunity one was qualified for. I had 7 years of foundation experience, a college degree, great references from everyone except Julian. But somehow no one was calling back. On day 10, I got a text from a former colleague at another nonprofit. I wanted to give you a heads up. Julian's been making calls. Telling people you were difficult to work with, that you took credit for his ideas, that the foundation's success was all him. Some people are listening. I don't believe him, but thought you should know. I sat on the hotel bed and stared at the message. Julian wasn't just leaving me. He was destroying my reputation, making sure I couldn't build a new life anywhere in his world. Week 3, I ran out of money for the hotel. My college friends offered their couches, but they had small apartments and families. I couldn't impose for more than a night or 2. That's how I ended up at the Riverside Motel. $40 a night. Mildew smell. Questionable stains. But it was all I could afford while I waited for the divorce to be final and that first payment to arrive. I hadn't told Grandma Ruth any of this. The shame was too deep. I'd cut her out of my life for Julian, and now I'd have to crawl back and admit she'd been right about him all along. Except I didn't get the chance. On day 15 at the Riverside Motel, I got a call from a lawyer in Charleston. Ms. Michaels? This is attorney Howard Brooks. I'm calling regarding your grandmother, Ruth Michaels. My blood went cold. Is she okay? I'm sorry to inform you that Mrs. Michaels passed away 6 months ago. I've been trying to reach you regarding her estate, but the contact information we had was outdated. 6 months. Grandma Ruth had been dead for 6 months. She died while I was married to Julian, while I'd been too busy with foundation galas and society luncheons to call her. She died and I hadn't even known. The funeral was 6 months ago. I'm very sorry. We did try to contact you. Julian had been screening my mail. Had he known? Had he hidden the notifications on purpose? Miss Michaels? Are you still there? Yes. I'm sorry. This is a shock. I understand. I'm calling because you're the sole beneficiary of your grandmother's estate. There are some documents that require your signature, and some items to be claimed. Would you be able to come to Charleston? I don't have much money right now. Can we handle it remotely? There was a pause. The estate is substantial enough that I really think you should come in person. I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone, but I assure you, Ms. Michaels, it will be worth the trip. Substantial. Grandma Ruth had worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. She'd lived in a tiny apartment. What could she possibly have left? I'll try to figure something out, I said, but I had no idea how. A plane ticket to Charleston was money I didn't have. I hung up and let myself cry. I'd missed Grandma Ruth's funeral. I hadn't been there when she died. I'd abandoned her for a man who'd thrown me away like garbage. And now she was gone, and I couldn't even afford to fly to Charleston to handle her estate. That night, I got another message from an unknown number. Your husband is with Cassandra at the Four Seasons tonight. Room 2847. Thought you should know. I stared at the message. Someone was sending me updates on Julian and Cassandra's affair. Someone wanted me to know every detail of how they were living their best life while I was stuck in a motel room. I blocked the number and turned off my phone. The next few days blurred together. I applied to more jobs. Nothing. I called temp agencies. They had nothing in my skill range. I looked at food service jobs, retail jobs, anything that would pay. But without a permanent address, without professional clothes, without references that weren't poisoned by Julian's lies, I couldn't even get an interview at Target. I ate once a day to save money. Ramen noodles from the convenience store. Peanut butter from the dollar store. I lost weight I didn't have to lose. My clothes hung off me. My hair, which I'd always kept perfectly maintained, was now pulled back in a permanent bun because I couldn't afford to go to a salon. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. The woman staring back had given up. She'd let a man and a fake friend destroy her. She'd abandoned her grandmother for people who never loved her. She'd believed in a fairy tale and now she was paying the price. Week 3 at the Riverside Motel was when I started wondering if any of this was worth it. If maybe Julian had been right, I wasn't special, I wasn't strong, I was just a girl who'd gotten lucky for a few years and now reality was catching up. I'd hit bottom. I didn't think I could fall any further. And that's exactly when Randy knocked on my door with a dusty suitcase that had my name on it. Everything was about to change. I just didn't know it yet. After Randy left, I sat on the bed for 2 hours just staring at the money. $70,000. It felt like play money, like something from a movie. I'd grown used to having nothing. The sudden abundance was overwhelming. I counted it 3 times to make sure it was real. Each bill was genuine. Each stack was exactly what it appeared to be. The plane ticket was real too. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. departure. First class. Charleston, South Carolina. But it was the note that I kept coming back to, reading over and over. Sienna, this is just travel money. The real fortune is waiting for you at 1482 Belmont Street, Charleston. Go there. Everything you need is there. Everything you lost was preparing you for what you're about to gain. Trust me one more time. Your flight leaves tomorrow. Don't miss it. The handwriting was definitely Grandma Ruth's. I'd know those elegant loops anywhere. She'd written me letters all through college, encouraging me when exams got tough, reminding me to eat vegetables, telling me she was proud of me. I'd stopped reading her letters around year 3 of my marriage. Julian said it was time to focus on our future, not my past. I'd actually believed him. Now Grandma Ruth was gone, and this note was the last thing she'd ever say to me. Trust me one more time. I'd broken her trust by choosing Julian over her. By slowly fading out of her life. By missing her funeral. And still she'd left me this. A way out. A second chance. I pulled out my phone and looked up 1482 Belmont Street in Charleston. It was in the French Quarter, one of the historic districts. The building looked beautiful in the photos, old brick, black shutters, flower boxes in the windows. But I couldn't find any information about what was inside or who owned it. The lawyer, Howard Brooks, had said Grandma Ruth's estate was substantial. Could this be it? Did she own this property? But how? Grandma Ruth had worked as a seamstress, a cleaning lady, and a cafeteria worker. She'd never made more than minimum wage. Where would she have gotten money for Charleston real estate? Unless there was something about her life I didn't know. Something she'd kept hidden. I looked at the message from earlier, the one about getting on the plane, the one that mentioned my grandmother. I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared immediately, like they'd been waiting. "A friend of your grandmother's. She made me promise to make sure you got on that plane. She knew you'd need convincing. She knew you'd doubt yourself. But Sienna, you need to trust her plan. Charleston is your fresh start." How did you know I'd be at this motel? Your grandmother was a smart woman. She knew Julian's type. She knew what he'd do. She had investigators watching him for over a year. They documented everything, the affair, the financial manipulation, how he isolated you. She knew exactly how the divorce would go. She planned for all of it. My hands started shaking. She knew? Before it happened. She knew Julian's character. She saw the patterns. She tried to warn you, but you'd stop talking to her. So she did the only thing she could. She prepared for the day you'd need her help. And she made sure you'd have everything you needed to start over. I thought back to the last conversation I'd had with Grandma Ruth, almost a year ago. She'd called on my birthday. Julian had been hosting a party, and I'd stepped away to take the call. "Baby girl, are you happy?" she'd asked. "Of course, Grandma." Julian threw me a beautiful party. That's not what I asked. Are you happy? Deep down in your heart. I'd hesitated. I have everything I ever wanted. That's still not what I asked. Julian had called for me, wanted me to come cut the cake. I have to go, Grandma. I'll call you next week. I never did. She knew, I whispered to the empty room. My phone buzzed again. She loved you, Sienna. She never stopped loving you. And she wanted to make sure that when Julian showed his true colors, you'd have a way out. She spent her last year planning this for you. Don't waste her gift. Get on that plane. I don't even know what's in Charleston. You will when you get there. Trust the process. Trust her. You're stronger than Julian made you believe. It's time to remember who you really are. The messages stopped after that. I tried to respond, but nothing went through. Whoever it was had said what they needed to say. I looked at the money again. $70,000. Enough to start over. Enough to get my life back on track, even without whatever was waiting in Charleston. But Grandma Ruth had said this was just travel money. She planned something bigger. I thought about Julian, probably at the Four Seasons right now with Cassandra. Celebrating their affair. Planning their future together. Congratulating themselves on how easily they disposed of me. I thought about all the people who'd believed Julian's lies. Who'd frozen me out of the nonprofit world. Who'd decided I wasn't worth hiring because Julian Prescott said so. I thought about the woman I'd been before Julian, confident, ambitious, ready to take on the world. The woman I'd slowly buried under the weight of his expectations. Maybe it was time to dig her out. I packed my pathetic suitcase carefully. I put most of the money in a money belt I bought from the convenience store. The rest I split between my shoes and the lining of my bag. Probably paranoid, but I wasn't taking chances. I set 3 alarms for 3 a.m. I'd need to catch a cab to the airport by 4 to make a 6 a.m. flight. Then I lay in bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling one last time. Tomorrow everything would change. I'd fly first class, something I hadn't done since my marriage ended, to a city I'd never been to. I'd find an address I'd never heard of. I'd discover what my grandmother had been planning. And maybe, just maybe, I'd start to rebuild my life into something that was actually mine. I fell asleep thinking about Grandma Ruth. Her smile. Her laugh. The way she used to call me baby girl, and tell me I could do anything I set my mind to. Trust me one more time, her note had said. Okay, Grandma. One more time. I'm trusting you. The plane touched down in Charleston at 9:47 a.m. I'd spent the flight in a first-class seat that felt like a throne compared to the motel bed I'd been sleeping in. The flight attendant had offered me champagne, fresh fruit, warm cookies. I'd taken it all, storing the cookies in my purse for later because I still wasn't used to the idea that I could eat whenever I wanted. Charleston was nothing like I expected. Where New York had been cold and gray, Charleston was bright and green. Palmetto trees lined the streets. Historic buildings painted in pastels stood next to modern shops. The air smelled like salt water and flowers. I caught a taxi, gave the driver the address on Belmont Street. That's the French Quarter, he said, nodding approvingly. Beautiful area. You visiting family? Something like that. As we drove through the city, I pressed my face to the window like a kid. Everything felt lighter here. Softer. People walked slower. They smiled at strangers. Street musicians played on corners, their guitar cases open for tips. It was the opposite of Julian's world, that fast-paced, cutthroat, always hustling New York lifestyle where everyone was networking and no one was real. We turned onto Belmont Street and my breath caught. The street was lined with historic homes, each one more beautiful than the last. Iron gates, brick sidewalks, gas lamps that probably still worked. Flower boxes overflowed with bright blooms. This wasn't just a nice neighborhood, this was serious old money. 1482, the driver said, pulling up in front of a 3-story brick building with black shutters and a bright blue door. A hand-painted sign hung above the entrance, Ruth's Antiques and Restorations. Ruth's? My grandmother's name. This is it? I asked, my voice shaky. Yes, ma'am. Need me to wait? No, thank you. I paid him with some of the cash from the suitcase, adding a generous tip because I could. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, just staring at the building. Through the large front windows I could see furniture, antique tables, ornate mirrors, vintage lamps. Everything looked expensive and well-maintained. My grandmother had owned an antique store. In Charleston. And I'd never known. A well-dressed black man in his 60s was unlocking the front door. He saw me standing there and smiled. Good morning. We're just opening, but you're welcome to come in and browse. I'm looking for Howard Brooks. The attorney? His expression changed, became warmer. You're Sienna. Thank goodness. I was hoping you'd come. He extended his hand. I'm Howard Brooks. Your grandmother was a dear friend of mine. Please come inside. The shop was beautiful. Hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, carefully curated antiques arranged like a museum. Everything from Victorian furniture to Art Deco jewelry to vintage books. Price tags showed numbers that made my eyes widen. $4,000 for a table, $2,500 for a mirror, $800 for a set of china. Your grandmother built this business over 40 years, Brooks said, watching me take it all in. She started with a tiny storefront, buying estate sale items and reselling them. She had an eye for quality, for hidden treasures. Over the decades, she built a reputation as one of the finest antique dealers in the South. I didn't know. She never told me. She was a private woman. And if I may be frank, Ms. Michaels, I think she kept this from you because she didn't want your ex-husband to know about it. Julian. Yes. Your grandmother came to see me about 5 years ago, shortly after your wedding. She wanted to make sure her assets were protected, that they'd go to you and only you in the event of her death. She was very clear that your husband should never have access to any of it. 5 years ago. Right after I'd married Julian. She'd known even then that something was wrong. Brooks led me through the shop to a back office. It was cozy, a mahogany desk, leather chairs, built-in bookshelves. A framed photo on the desk showed Grandma Ruth in front of this very building, smiling proudly. Please sit. Brooks opened a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Your grandmother passed away 6 months ago. I tried to contact you, but... I know. I'm sorry. I should have been there. She understood. She told me you'd lost your way but that you'd find it again. She seemed very certain of that. He opened the folder. Let me explain your inheritance. He laid out documents in front of me. My hands shook as I read through them. The building worth $2.3 million. The business, including inventory, estimated value $1.8 million. Investment accounts $4.7 million. A life insurance policy $500,000. Total value, approximately $9.3 million. I stopped breathing. I don't understand. How did she? Where did? Your grandmother was very smart with money. She bought this building in 1985 for $80,000. She invested carefully. She never spent more than she needed to. Every profit from the business went into investments or back into inventory. She lived modestly in the apartment upstairs and poured everything into building wealth she could pass on to you. $9 million. Plus this building, the business, and all the inventory. Everything is yours, Ms. Michaels. Your grandmother set up the trust so that it would bypass probate, go directly to you, and be completely protected from any marital claims. Your ex-husband has no right to any of it. I looked at the photo of Grandma Ruth again. She was wearing her usual simple clothes, jeans and a nice blouse, but she was standing in front of a multi-million-dollar business she'd built from nothing. She'd been rich. All those years, while I thought she was struggling, while I felt guilty for making it, through my marriage to Julian, she'd been quietly building a fortune. And she'd never told me because she didn't want Julian to know. There's more, Brooks said gently. He handed me an envelope. She left this for you. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died. The envelope was sealed with wax, old-fashioned, like Grandma Ruth herself. My name was written across the front in her elegant handwriting. Would you like some privacy? Brooks asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He left me alone in the office. I turned the envelope over in my hands, almost afraid to open it. This was the last thing my grandmother would ever say to me. Finally, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My dearest Sienna, if you're reading this, then my time has passed and you've made it to Charleston. I'm so proud of you for getting on that plane. I knew you would. You're stronger than you think, baby girl. By now, Howard has told you about the inheritance. I imagine you're shocked. I never told you about the business because I wanted you to find your own way in the world. I didn't want you to rely on my money. I wanted you to build your own strength, your own confidence. But I also knew that someday you might need help. And I wanted to make sure I could give it to you. Let me tell you a story. When you were 8 years old and your parents died in that accident, I became your guardian. I was 52, working 3 jobs, living in a tiny apartment. I had nothing but love to give you. But I promised your mother, my beautiful daughter, that I would give you every opportunity she would have wanted for you. So I worked. I saved. And I dreamed. One day, I was cleaning a house in Charleston. I'd taken a job that required me to travel here once a month. The woman who owned the house was selling everything and moving to a nursing home. She offered me first pick of her belongings for cheap. I saw a Victorian writing desk that I knew was valuable. I bought it for $50 and sold it for $800. That's when I realized I had an eye for this, for seeing value where others didn't. I used that $800 to buy more pieces. I rented a small storage unit. I started going to estate sales every weekend. Within 5 years, I'd saved enough to buy a tiny storefront here in Charleston. I kept my other jobs, worked 18-hour days, but I built this business piece by piece. You were in high school then. You never knew about the Charleston trips because I timed them for when you were at school. I wanted to keep this separate, keep it as my insurance policy for your future. The business grew. I learned restoration. I developed relationships with collectors. I invested every extra dollar. Not in fancy things for myself, I didn't need fancy. I invested in your future. By the time you graduated college, I had built something substantial. But I didn't tell you because I wanted you to make your own way. I wanted you to know your own strength. Then you met Julian. Oh baby girl. I saw who he was the first time I met him. The way he looked at you like you were a pretty thing he wanted to own. The way he talked over you in conversations. The way he slowly started suggesting you change this or that about yourself. I tried to warn you gently. Do you remember? I asked if you were happy. If he treated you well. If you still felt like yourself. You said yes, but I could see the truth in your eyes. You were already starting to disappear. I wanted to tell you then. About the business. About the money. I wanted to give you a safety net so you could leave him. But I realized something. You had to learn this lesson yourself. You had to see who Julian really was. You had to hit bottom so you could find your own strength on the way back up. If I'd rescued you too early, you would have always wondered. You would have always doubted yourself. You would have believed Julian's lie that you needed him to survive. So I waited. And I watched. And I hired investigators to document his affairs so that when you finally saw the truth, you'd have proof. So you'd know it wasn't your fault. So you'd know he was exactly as terrible as he seemed. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry you had to suffer. But I promise you that suffering wasn't for nothing. It taught you who you really are. You are not the woman Julian tried to make you. You are not small or quiet or decorative. You are brilliant and strong and capable of anything. You are your mother's daughter. You are my granddaughter. You come from women who survived, who built, who refused to be broken. And now it's your turn. This business is yours. This building is yours. The money is yours. But more importantly, the chance to build a new life, a real life, is yours. Don't waste it trying to go back to who you were before Julian. That woman was just the beginning. Build something better. Build something that's truly yours. I wish I could be there to see it. But I'll be watching from wherever I end up, cheering you on like I always have. You're going to do amazing things, Sienna. I know it. I love you forever, Grandma Ruth. Don't take Julian back when he comes crawling. And he will come crawling. Men like him always do when they realize what they've lost. You're worth so much more than he could ever appreciate. Remember that. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. My grandmother had known. She'd known everything. She'd watched me suffer and hadn't rescued me because she knew I needed to save myself. And she'd been right. If she'd told me about the money 5 years ago, I would have stayed with Julian. I would have convinced myself I could fix the marriage, that I just needed to try harder. I would have spent the fortune trying to make him love me. But now I knew exactly what Julian was. I'd hit bottom. I'd felt what it was like to have nothing. I'd learned that I could survive without his money, his status, his world. And now I had the resources to build something real. There was a soft knock on the door. Brooks came back in, took one look at my face and handed me a box of tissues. She was something special, he said quietly. She was everything. I wiped my eyes. What do I do now? Whatever you want. The business is yours. You can sell it, keep running it, completely transform it. There's an apartment upstairs, your grandmother's apartment, that's yours now. The business has a staff of 3 who've agreed to stay on and help train you if you want to learn. But it's all your choice, Sienna. That's the point. You finally get to choose. When was the last time I'd made a real choice? Every decision in my marriage had been filtered through, what would Julian think? Or what would Julian want? Now I could choose anything. I want to see the apartment, I said. Brooks smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Come on. He led me through the shop to a door marked private, and up a narrow staircase. At the top was a beautiful apartment, 2 bedrooms, exposed brick walls, tall windows overlooking Belmont Street. It was furnished simply but elegantly. Everything was clean and comfortable and real. She lived here for 35 years, Brooks said. Never wanted anything bigger. She said this was exactly enough. I walked through the space, running my hands over furniture that my grandmother had touched. In the bedroom, I found more pictures of me through the years. My high school graduation. My college graduation. Even a few from my wedding, though I noticed there were none of Julian alone. On her nightstand was a journal. I picked it up, flipped through it. The last entry was dated 2 weeks before she died. Sienna will come home soon. I can feel it. Julian will show his true colors and she'll finally see. When she does, she'll need a place to land. I've built that place for her. Everything is ready. I just wish I could be here to see her thrive. But I'll have to trust that she'll find her way. She always has. She always will. My strong, beautiful baby girl. I closed the journal and held it to my chest. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. Brooks cleared his throat. So, Ms. Michaels, what would you like to do? I looked out the window at the street below. At the beautiful historic buildings. At the people walking by, living their lives, building their dreams. I thought about Julian, probably still thinking he'd won. Still thinking I was broken and helpless. I thought about Cassandra, believing she'd taken something valuable from me. They had no idea what I'd just inherited. They had no idea what I was about to become. I want to learn the business, I said, turning back to Brooks. I want to learn everything my grandmother knew. I want to build on what she started. I want to make her proud. Brooks smiled. She already was proud of you, Ms. Michaels. But I think you're about to give her even more reasons to be. Welcome home. Home. The word felt right. For the first time in 7 years I was home. Not in a mansion that belonged to someone else. Not in a life built on someone else's terms. But here, in a beautiful apartment above an antique shop, in a city that smelled like salt water and flowers, where I could finally start building a life that was completely my own. Julian had thrown me away like trash. He had no idea he'd just set me free. The first month in Charleston passed in a blur of learning. I threw myself into the antique business like my life depended on it because in a way, it did. Not for survival but for proof. Proof that I was more than Julian's discarded wife. Proof that I could build something meaningful. Proof that Grandma Ruth's faith in me wasn't misplaced. The shop staff welcomed me warmly. There was Patricia, a 60-year-old white woman who'd worked with Grandma Ruth for 20 years and knew everything about furniture restoration. There was James, a 30-something black man with a degree in art history who handled appraisals and estate sales. And there was Sophie, a 25-year-old recent college graduate who managed the online presence and social media. Your grandmother talked about you all the time, Patricia said on my first official day. She was so proud of you. And she always said you'd come home eventually. I should have come sooner. You came when you were ready. That's what matters. They taught me everything. Patricia showed me how to identify authentic pieces from reproductions, how to restore wood without damaging its value, how to negotiate with estate sellers. James taught me about different periods and styles, how to research provenance, how to spot a hidden treasure in a pile of junk. Sophie showed me how to photograph pieces, write descriptions that sold, manage online auctions. I was a sponge, absorbing everything. I'd wake up at 6, go for a run through the historic district, then open the shop at 9. I'd work until 6 or 7, then spend evenings reading books about antiques, studying auction catalogs, researching pieces we'd acquired. For the first time in years I felt useful, smart, capable. More than that, I felt like myself. The woman I'd been before Julian, confident, curious, unafraid, was coming back. But she was different now. Stronger. Wiser. She'd been broken and had put herself back together, and the cracks had filled in with gold. 6 weeks in, James brought me to my first estate sale. A wealthy family was selling their grandmother's belongings after she passed. This is where your grandmother built her fortune, James explained as we walked through the house. Estate sales, auctions, people who don't know what they have. You need a good eye and quick decision-making skills. The house was full of furniture and decorations, most of it ordinary. But in a back bedroom I spotted something, a painting hanging crookedly on the wall, covered in dust. The frame was beautiful, gilded, ornate, definitely old. But it was the painting itself that caught my attention. The brushstrokes, the style, the signature in the corner. James, I called quietly. Look at this. He came over, squinted at the painting, then his eyes went wide. Is that? I think it might be. I'd been reading about Southern artists from the 1800s. This signature looked like one I'd seen. How much are they asking for things? Everything's priced to move. They want it gone today. The painting had a $200 price tag. If I was right about the artist, it was worth $15,000 or more. We're taking it, I said. James grinned. You've got your grandmother's eye. We bought the painting and 3 other pieces. Back at the shop, I spent hours researching. By the end of the day, I'd confirmed it. The painting was by William Aiken Walker, a notable Southern artist. Value $18,000. I turned $200 into $18,000 in one day. Your grandmother would be so proud, Patricia said when I showed her the research. Your first big find. I felt a rush of pride. Not because of the money, but because I'd done this. I'd used my own knowledge, my own instincts, my own skills. Julian had told me I wasn't smart enough for business. That I was just a pretty face, good for charity events but not real work. He'd been so wrong. 2 months in, I started making changes to the business. Sophie and I launched an Instagram account showcasing our pieces. I wrote the captions myself, telling the story of each item, its history, why it mattered. People responded. We went from 200 followers to 5,000 in 3 weeks. I started an email newsletter about antiques and restoration. I shared tips, told stories about pieces we'd found, offered advice about decorating with vintage items. The subscriber list grew to 2,000 people. I pitched an article to a local magazine about historic Charleston homes and the importance of preserving antiques. They published it with my photo and a link to our shop. Business doubled. 3 months in, we had our best month ever. I hired 2 more employees to handle the increased workload. I started talking to Patricia about opening a second location. You're a natural at this, James said one afternoon as we unpacked a new acquisition. Your grandmother built this over decades. You're growing it in months. I have a good team. And good teachers. No, you have vision. That's different. You're not just running the business your grandmother left. You're evolving it. Making it yours. Making it mine. That felt right. 4 months in, Architectural Digest contacted us. They wanted to feature our shop in an article about Charleston's antique scene. They sent a photographer, interviewed me about my approach to restoration and sustainability. The article came out 6 weeks later. My photo was on the page, me standing in the shop, wearing jeans and a nice blouse, looking confident and happy. The caption called me Charleston's rising star in the antique world, and quoted me talking about honoring the past while building the future. I had the magazine framed and hung it in the shop. Next to it, I hung a photo of Grandma Ruth in front of the building on the day she bought it. Past and future side by side. 5 months in, I finally felt ready to visit Grandma Ruth's grave. Brooks had told me where was a small cemetery on the edge of town, peaceful and beautiful. I brought flowers, yellow roses, her favorite. I sat on the grass next to her headstone and told her everything. About the business. About the Architectural Digest article. About how I'd found a painting worth $18,000. About the friends I'd made. About how happy I was. You were right, Grandma, I said, my fingers tracing her name on the stone. I needed to hit bottom to find my strength. I needed to lose everything to figure out what actually mattered. I was so angry at you for not rescuing me sooner. But now I understand. You gave me something better than a rescue. You gave me the tools to save myself. The wind rustled the trees, and for just a moment, I felt her presence. Like she was there with me, smiling. I'm going to make you so proud, I whispered. I'm going to build something amazing. And I'm never going to let anyone make me feel small again. That evening I got a text from an unknown number. My first instinct was to delete it. Unknown numbers usually meant bad news. But curiosity won. Sienna? It's Thomas Bennett. We met at the estate sale last month. You bought the Walker painting. I'm a curator at the Charleston Museum, and I'd love to talk to you about a potential exhibit featuring local antique dealers. Would you be interested in coffee? I remembered Thomas. Tall, handsome, black, maybe 40. He'd been at the estate sale representing the museum, looking for pieces for their permanent collection. We talked briefly about Southern art and the importance of preserving history. I'd felt a spark but had pushed it away. I wasn't ready for romance. Maybe I'd never be ready again. But coffee wasn't romance. Coffee was business. I texted back, coffee sounds great. There's a place on King Street. Tomorrow at 10? Perfect. See you then. I looked at myself in the mirror that night. The woman looking back was different from the one who'd arrived in Charleston 5 months ago. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost. Her skin glowed. Her hair was healthy and styled in a way she loved, not in a way Julian had approved of. She looked happy. For the first time in years, she looked free. Julian had tried to break me. He'd thrown me away thinking I'd crumble. Instead, I'd rebuilt myself into something better. And I was just getting started. Thomas and I met for coffee the next morning. He was even more handsome than I remembered, tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He wore a casual button-down and jeans, looking nothing like the stuffy museum curator stereotype. We talked for 2 hours about antiques, about Charleston's history, about the museum exhibit he was planning. He wanted to feature 6 local antique dealers, showcasing how they were preserving Southern heritage through their businesses. "I think you'd be perfect for the exhibit," he said. "You've got a great story carrying on your grandmother's legacy, bringing new life to the business. Plus, that Walker painting was an incredible find. I'd love to be part of it." We exchanged numbers, made plans to meet again to discuss details. As I was leaving, he said, "Sienna, would it be okay if I asked you to dinner sometime? Not business. Just dinner." My first instinct was to say no. I wasn't ready. I was still healing. I couldn't risk my heart again. But then I thought about Grandma Ruth's letter. About building a real life. About being brave enough to try again. "I'd like that," I said. "But I need to take things slow." Slow is good. I'm a patient man. I walked back to the shop feeling light. Not because I was falling for Thomas, it was way too early for that. But because I'd said yes to a possibility. I'd opened a door instead of slamming it shut. Growth, I thought. This is what growth feels like. I was halfway through the day when the shop door opened and Julian walked in. I'd know that walk anywhere, confident to the point of arrogance, like he owned every room he entered. He wore an expensive suit, though I noticed it wasn't as perfectly tailored as his usual. His hair was slightly longer than he normally kept it. He looked tired. Older. Patricia, who was behind the counter, tensed. "Can I help you?" Then Julian saw me across the shop and his face lit up. "Sienna. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." My heart started pounding, but not from longing. From anger. From the violation of him being here, in my space, in the life I'd built without him. "Patricia," I said calmly. "Can you call building security? We have an unwanted visitor." "Wait, Sienna, please. I just want to talk." Julian moved toward me, hands raised. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You have nothing I want to hear. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was an idiot. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. I stared at him, genuinely shocked. Was he serious? Did he actually think I'd want him back? "You need to leave. Just hear me out. Please." He glanced around the shop, taking in the beautiful antiques, the professional setup. "This is amazing. You've done so well for yourself. I always knew you were capable of more than I gave you credit for. You told me I was boring. That I wasn't smart enough for real business. That I was just a pretty accessory. I was wrong. I was cruel. I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of how much I needed you. Sienna, you were the only real thing in my life. Everything else is fake, the business, the networking, the social climbing. You were real. And I threw you away because I was too stupid to see it." I crossed my arms. "What happened, Julian? Why are you really here?" His face crumbled. Everything fell apart. "The SEC investigation found irregularities in our accounting. I'm facing charges. The company's bankrupt. I lost everything." There it was. The truth. "And Cassandra? She left me 3 months ago. As soon as the money trouble started. Moved on to some hedge fund manager in Miami. She never loved me. She just wanted access to wealth. I should have felt satisfaction. Vindication. Some sense of justice being served. Instead, I felt nothing. No anger. No joy. Just indifference. Julian meant nothing to me anymore. So you came here thinking what? That I'd take you back? Help you out financially? We were good together once. Remember? We could be good again. You clearly don't need my money anymore. We could build something as equals." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Julian, we were never equals. You made sure of that. You isolated me from my family and friends. You controlled every aspect of my life. You made me small so you could feel big. I've changed." "No, you haven't. You're just broken, alone, and desperate. And you think I'm a backup plan. That's not. Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You're going to leave my shop. You're going to leave Charleston. And you're never going to contact me again. If you do, I'll file a restraining order. Sienna, please. I love you." "No, you don't. You never did. And that's okay because I don't love you either. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done." Patricia appeared with 2 security guards. "Ms. Michaels asked you to leave." Julian looked at me one more time. I saw desperation in his eyes, panic. He'd come here expecting me to be broken, needing him, willing to take him back because I had no other options. He'd found a woman who didn't need him at all. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. The only thing I regret is wasting 7 years on you. Goodbye, Julian. The security guards escorted him out. Through the window, I watched him get into a rental car, not the Tesla he used to drive, not the Mercedes. An economy rental car. He'd lost everything just like he'd made me lose everything. The difference was I'd rebuilt. I'd found my strength. I'd discovered what I was really capable of. Julian? He'd probably just move on to the next woman who might save him. And he'd destroy her too, because that's what men like him do. But it wouldn't be me. Never again. You okay? Patricia asked gently. I'm perfect. And I meant it. That evening I got a message request on Instagram. From Cassandra. Sienna, I know you probably hate me and you have every right to. But I need to talk to you. I made terrible mistakes. I was jealous and selfish and I hurt you in ways I can't even fully apologize for. Julian wasn't who I thought he was. I lost everything too, my job, my reputation, my self-respect. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm hoping we can talk. Maybe over coffee? For old time's sake. I read the message twice. Then I blocked her. No coffee. No conversation. No explanations or apologies. Cassandra had made her choices. She'd betrayed our friendship for a man and money. Now she was facing consequences and wanted sympathy from the woman she'd stabbed in the back. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the one who accepted bad treatment because I was afraid of being alone. I wasn't the one who let toxic people back into my life because they said sorry. I was done with people who only wanted me when they needed something. I put my phone away and looked around the apartment. My apartment. In my building. Above my business. Everything I saw was mine. Really mine. Built by my grandmother and now being grown by me. Julian and Cassandra could have each other, could destroy each other, could do whatever they wanted. I had better things to do. Like meet Thomas for dinner tomorrow. Like plan the museum exhibit. Like open that second location I'd been considering. Like live a life that was finally, completely, perfectly mine. 1 year after finding the suitcase in room 12 at the Riverside Motel, I stood in the grand opening of Ruth's Antiques and Restoration's flagship gallery. The new location was 3 times the size of the original shop, in a beautiful renovated warehouse near the waterfront. Exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, carefully curated displays that looked like art installations. It was magnificent. Over 200 people filled the space: collectors, other antique dealers, museum staff, journalists from design magazines, city officials. Everyone who was anyone in Charleston's historic preservation community had come to see what I'd built. I wore a dress I'd bought myself, deep emerald green, elegant but not flashy. My natural hair was styled in loose curls. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones she'd left me. I looked like myself. Successful. Confident. Free. This is incredible, Thomas said, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. We'd been dating for 6 months now, taking things slow like I'd asked. He'd been patient and kind and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. I was falling for him. Slowly, carefully, but really falling. Thank you for being here, I said, clinking my glass against his. Wouldn't miss it. I'm so proud of you, Sienna. The museum exhibit he'd curated had opened 3 months ago, featuring our shop prominently. The publicity had been amazing. Business had tripled. I'd hired 8 more employees. Opened this second location. Started offering restoration classes to the community. The local newspaper had done a feature on me, From Rock Bottom to Rising Star, How Sienna Michaels Built Charleston's Hottest Antique Business. I told them most of the story: the divorce, losing everything, inheriting my grandmother's business. I'd left out Julian's name though. He didn't deserve to be part of my story anymore. Patricia came over, beaming. The mayor just bought that Victorian armoire for City Hall. $18,000. I hugged her. Grandma Ruth would be so happy. She'd be beyond happy. She'd be over the moon. You've taken everything she built and made it even better. James appeared, phone in hand. Sienna, Architectural Digest wants to do a follow-up article about the new location and your expansion. They want to shoot next month. Tell them yes. Sophie bounced up, excited. We just hit 50,000 followers on Instagram. And 3 interior designers have reached out about sourcing pieces for celebrity clients. I looked around at my team, these people who'd believed in me, taught me, helped me build something incredible. I'd started with nothing but my grandmother's gift and a willingness to work hard. 1 year later, I had 2 thriving businesses, a team of talented people, a beautiful apartment, genuine friendships, and the beginning of what might be real love with Thomas. I had everything, and it was all mine. Earned by me. Built by me. No one could take it away. Speech time, Patricia announced, tapping a glass. The crowd quieted. Everyone turned to look at me. I took a deep breath. Public speaking used to terrify me. Julian had always done the talking at events, said I was too nervous, that I'd embarrass him if I tried. But I'd been practicing. Taking Toastmasters classes. Working with a speaking coach. Building confidence one word at a time. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. A year ago, I was living in a motel room, wondering if I'd ever get my life back. I'd lost my marriage, my job, my home. I felt like I'd lost myself. The room was silent, everyone listening. Then I found a gift my grandmother had left for me. Not just money or property, but something more valuable, a second chance. A foundation to rebuild my life on. And the knowledge that I was stronger than I believed. I looked at the photo of Grandma Ruth we'd displayed in the gallery. My grandmother, Ruth Michaels, built this business from nothing. She worked 3 jobs while raising me. She saved every penny. She invested wisely. And she never gave up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. This expansion isn't just about business growth. It's about honoring her legacy. About taking what she built and carrying it forward. About creating something that will last for generations. I raised my glass. To Grandma Ruth. To second chances. To building something real. And to all of you who've supported this journey. Thank you. To Ruth, everyone chorused, raising their glasses. The party continued late into the evening. People bought pieces, asked questions about restoration, scheduled consultations. It was the most successful opening I could have imagined. Around 10, Thomas and I stepped outside for some air. The waterfront was beautiful at night, lights reflecting on the water. You did it, Thomas said, taking my hand. You really did it. We did it. I couldn't have done this without the team. Without you. Sienna, I need to tell you something. He turned to face me, looking nervous. I'm falling in love with you. I know we said slow, and I'm not asking you to say it back. I just need you to know. You're incredible. The way you rebuilt your life, the way you turned pain into purpose, the way you treat people with kindness even after you were treated so badly. You're the most impressive person I've ever met. My heart swelled. 6 months ago, I would have panicked at those words. I would have pulled away, afraid to trust, afraid to be vulnerable. But I've been doing therapy. Working through my trauma from the marriage. Learning to distinguish between healthy love and Julian's control. Thomas was nothing like Julian. He supported my independence. He celebrated my success. He never tried to make me smaller. I'm falling for you too, I said. And it terrifies me. But in a good way. He smiled, pulled me close. We'll take it at your pace. No rush. I'm not going anywhere. We kissed under the stars, and for the first time since my marriage ended, I felt hope about love. Real hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope I'd had with Julian, but quiet confidence that this could be something real. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I checked it. Saw the article about your gallery. Impressive. You've done well for yourself. I'm glad you found your way. I'm sorry for everything. Julian. Still reaching out, still trying to maintain some connection. I showed Thomas the message. What do you think I should do? Block him. He had his chance. He doesn't get to watch you win from the sidelines. I blocked the number without responding. Another text came through, this time from a different unknown number. It's Cassandra. I saw the Architectural Digest article. You look so happy. I'm truly sorry for everything I did to you. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say it one more time. I hope life gives you everything you deserve. I blocked that number too. Some people deserved second chances. Julian and Cassandra weren't those people. We went back inside. The party was winding down. Patricia, James, Sophie, and the rest of the team were laughing together, celebrating. This was my family now. These people who'd welcomed me, taught me, believed in me. This was my life now. Built on solid ground. Based on real relationships. Completely and totally mine. As I looked around the gallery at everything I'd created, I felt Grandma Ruth's presence. She'd been right. Losing everything had been the beginning, not the end. I'd fallen. I'd hit rock bottom. I climbed back up. And now I was flying. 18 months after leaving the Riverside Motel, I woke up in my Charleston apartment to sunshine streaming through the windows and Thomas making breakfast in the kitchen. He'd stayed over more frequently in recent months, and we'd started talking about him moving in officially. I'd never thought I'd want to live with a man again after Julian. But Thomas was different. He didn't try to control my space or my choices. He added to my life instead of taking from it. Morning beautiful, he said, plating scrambled eggs and toast. Big day today. Today was the official launch of the Ruth Michaels Foundation, a nonprofit I'd started to provide grants and mentorship to women rebuilding their lives after divorce or domestic situations. I'd used part of my inheritance to fund it, and several other successful women in Charleston had joined as board members. We'd already helped 30 women with housing assistance, job training, and small business grants. The foundation was my way of paying forward what Grandma Ruth had done for me. Nervous? Thomas asked. Excited. This is the part that matters most. The businesses are great, but this helping other women find their strength, this is what Grandma Ruth would have wanted. After breakfast, I went to the original shop. Patricia was already there, training 2 new employees. Business had grown so much that we needed staff at both locations full-time. Morning, boss, she said, grinning. Package came for you. From New York. My stomach dropped. New York meant Julian's world. I hadn't heard from him in over 6 months since I'd blocked his numbers. But the package was from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a legal document and a letter. The document showed that Julian had been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for securities fraud. His company's assets had been seized. He'd lost everything and was filing for bankruptcy. The letter was from his lawyer. Mr. Prescott asked me to forward this information to you, as you were once married. He wanted you to know that he takes full responsibility for his actions and wishes you well in your life. He asked for no response and no contact. This is closure. I read it twice, then filed it away. Julian was going to prison. His perfect life had completely fallen apart. I waited to feel something. Satisfaction. Vindication. Anything. But I felt nothing. He was just a man who'd made bad choices and was facing consequences. He wasn't the villain of my story anymore. He was just a chapter that was over. The foundation launch event was that afternoon. We'd rented a beautiful venue downtown. Over 100 people attended, local business owners, community leaders, women I'd helped through the foundation, press. I stood at the podium and told my story. The whole story, including Julian's name this time. I didn't do it to shame him or seek revenge. I did it because my story might help someone else feel less alone. When my marriage ended, I thought my life was over, I said. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But I'd actually lost everything that didn't matter. The fake friends. The shallow lifestyle. The identity I'd built around being someone's wife instead of being myself. What I found after losing everything was myself. My strength. My purpose. My voice. The Ruth Michaels Foundation exists because my grandmother understood something crucial. Women don't need to be rescued. We need resources, support, and space to rescue ourselves. The crowd applauded. Several women were crying. One stood up. I'm Brianna, she said. I received a grant from the foundation 6 months ago. I was living in my car with my 2 kids after leaving an abusive marriage. The foundation helped me get an apartment, pay for childcare, and enroll in nursing school. I start my job at Charleston Medical Center next month. More women stood, sharing their stories. How the foundation had helped them leave bad situations. How they'd rebuilt their lives. How they were thriving now. This, I thought. This is what wealth is for. Not fancy clothes or luxury cars. But giving other women the same second chance Grandma Ruth gave me. After the event, Thomas and I walked along the waterfront. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and pink. I'm so proud of you, he said. Not just for what you've built, but for who you've become. I'm proud of me too, I said. And I meant it. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. Is this Sienna Michaels? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes. My name is Jennifer Williams. I'm a producer for the Today Show. We're doing a segment on women entrepreneurs who've overcome adversity. Your story came across my desk and we'd love to have you on the show. Would you be interested? The Today Show. National television. Millions of viewers. Old Sienna would have panicked. Would have said she wasn't important enough. Would have asked Julian if it was okay. New Sienna said, I'd be honored. Let's make it happen. We scheduled the interview for 3 weeks out. They'd fly me to New York, put me up in a hotel, do a full segment on the foundation and my businesses. As I hung up, I realized something. I was going back to New York. The city where I'd lost everything. But I was going back as a completely different person. Not Julian's wife. Not a victim. But Sienna Michaels, entrepreneur, philanthropist, survivor, thriver. 3 weeks later, I sat in the Today Show studio, lights bright, cameras rolling. The host asked about my marriage, my divorce, hitting rock bottom. How did you find the strength to rebuild? She asked. My grandmother gave me the resources, but I had to find the strength myself. She knew that. She knew I needed to discover what I was capable of. And it turned out I was capable of more than I ever imagined. What would you say to women watching who are in similar situations? I looked directly at the camera. You are not defined by who left you. You are not your worst moment. You are not too old, too broken, too anything to start over. I was living in a motel room 18 months ago, thinking my life was over. Today, I own multiple businesses and run a foundation that's helped dozens of women rebuild their lives. It's not easy. It's not fast. But it's possible. You are stronger than you know. You are capable of more than you believe. And you deserve a life built on your terms, not someone else's. The interview went viral. The foundation's website crashed from traffic. Donations poured in. Women from across the country reached out, asking for help or wanting to start similar foundations in their cities. I spent the next 6 months traveling, speaking, helping other women launch programs. Thomas supported every step, never complaining about my busy schedule. On the 2-year anniversary of finding the suitcase, Thomas took me to dinner at the fanciest restaurant in Charleston. Afterward, we walked to the cemetery where Grandma Ruth was buried. I brought flowers like I did every month. Yellow roses. I have something to tell Grandma Ruth, Thomas said nervously. Okay. He got down on one knee. My heart stopped. Sienna Michaels, you are the strongest, kindest, most incredible woman I've ever met. You've taught me what real strength looks like. What real love looks like. I don't want to own you or control you or change you. I just want to walk beside you while you change the world. Will you marry me? The ring was simple, a single diamond, elegant and understated. Perfect. I thought about marriage. About how terrified I'd been of ever trying again. About how Julian had poisoned that word for me. But Thomas wasn't Julian. This wouldn't be Julian's marriage. This would be ours. Built on respect, independence, real love. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll marry you. We kissed next to Grandma Ruth's grave, and I swear I felt her smiling. Later that night, lying in Thomas's arms, I thought about everything that had happened. How I'd gone from a mansion to a motel to building an empire. How I'd lost everything and gained myself. Julian had called me boring. Cassandra had betrayed me. The world I'd known had rejected me. And it had been the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to discover who I really was. What I was really capable of. What I actually wanted from life. My phone buzzed with an email. From Cassandra, somehow getting my work email address. I saw you on the Today Show. You were amazing. I just wanted to say I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserved so much better than how I treated you. I hope you're living your best life. You certainly looked like you were. I didn't respond. Didn't block her this time. Just let it sit there, read and unimportant. Cassandra's opinion didn't matter anymore. Julian's opinion didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd built a life I was proud of. A life that honored Grandma Ruth's sacrifice. A life that helped other women find their strength. I looked at my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The woman looking back was unrecognizable from the one who'd opened that suitcase in the Riverside Motel. She was strong, confident, successful, and loved, making a difference. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered to the darkness, for not giving up on me, for knowing I needed to fall before I could fly, for giving me wings when I was ready to use them. The wind picked up outside, rustling the palmetto trees. Somewhere, I knew Grandma Ruth was smiling. Her baby girl had finally come home. Not to a place but to herself. And that was worth more than all the money in the world.